So fundamentally, there are two ways that we can collect data. We can either collect data through what are called observational studies or experimental studies. For observational studies, what we're looking to do is make our collections with minimal interaction, at least as minimal as possible. To an extent, there's always going to be an amount of it, and we'll talk about that later, but we want there to be as little effect from our observing the data as possible. So think about things like surveys, where what you might do is record the amount of time that certain office workers spend on their job outside of their regularly scheduled hours. On the other hand, for experimental studies, you are specifically going to be looking for the effect of something that you do, the effect of what's called a treatment, where we have the test or treatment group where you apply some action to them and you compare them to what's called the control group, the group on whom you do nothing. So you can see what the difference is between a group that goes about their everyday activities and a group that has specifically been treated for some things. Let's look at a quick example here where for this we are told that researchers study the effect of vitamin D3 supplementation among patients with antibody deficiencies or frequent respiratory tract infections, where 70% receive 4,000 IU of vitamin D3 daily for a year. And what we want to do is determine if this is observational or experimental, where in this case, this study is experimental because we are specifically looking for an effect. Specifically, we want the effect of vitamin D3 on such patients. The patients with one supplement and others getting the placebo. Usually when we get a control group, they're given something that doesn't act like the treatment, that's meant to look like the treatment but isn't actually doing anything in itself. Now, I will say here with this language and this example, it might put to mind the idea that experimental studies are inherently somewhat medical, like the idea that it is a treatment sort of implies that. But when we say treatment, we don't necessarily mean it in the health sense. We mean broadly any action taken that we want to see the effect of. For a different kind of example, we could look at the effects of this class on my students, where I could give 10 students in this class a exam with material that we're going to learn through the course of this class, and then give 10 to just random students I find in the library, and then at the end of the semester, find those 10 students from the library and those 10 students from my class, give them the same tests, and see what happens. In that case, the treatment, as it were, would be my class, where the treatment group would be my students, and the control group would be the ones in the library who presumably I had no other interaction with. But again, the idea of a treatment isn't medical, it's just an action trying to measure a possible reaction.